إني أسألك على ما توجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الحادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الذكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا وسيع الحسن والخلف الحجة، أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. حاجة يا سادتي وموالي، إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله، وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله، فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله، فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله، وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله، فكونوا عند الله رجائي، يا سادتي يا أولياء الله، صلى الله عليهم أجمعين، ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالمهم من الأولين والآخرين، آمين يا رب العالمين. الله. الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. The verse that I recited is ayat number 60 from Surah Tawbah. And while the previous 15, 20 ayat are in your mind regarding the Tabuk and the role of munafiqeen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now this new discussion that begins, while it is still connected to the previous one, He says the charities are only for the poor and the needy, and those employed to collect them, and those whose hearts are to be reconciled, and for the freedom of the slaves and the debtors, and in the way of Allah, and for the traveler. This is an ordinance from Allah, and Allah is all-knowing and all-wise. We've mentioned it before. Whenever the word sadaqah is used in Quran, it refers to or sadaqah over here that is being mentioned, it refers to the wajib paying. The wajib parts, that's why those 8 things that are mentioned, 8 obligatory, zakat is included in it. Zakat in the fiqhi meaning, that zakat which is wajib on those 9 things, that is part of this sadaqah. So the sadaqah should not be taken as the mustahab sadaqah, rather it is what? It is the wajib one. On the contrary, where you read the word zakat in Quran, that word zakat only refers to the other givings, which are all the other mustahab infaqat, which could be, for example, that you give just out of your goodness. It could be the mustahab sadaqah that we take out on regular basis, and it could be all the other infaqat that are mentioned. But sadaqah, when it's mentioned, it is referred to that wajib one. So the obligatory charities, as it says, that is the obligatory zakat, the fitrah, that is wajib upon all of us. You don't have a choice, it is wajib. Other expiations like the kafarat, kafara is wajib upon you. That is also part of the obligatory sadaqah. Must be spent only on the poor, the needy, and the collectors of zakat. Those whose hearts are to be reconciled, for freeing the slaves, the debtors, and in the way of Allah, and stranded travelers. Therefore, beggars, especially the hypocrites, must cut off their greed from it. So this is the connection from the previous ayat, where these munafiqeen would go get in line as soon as the share was being given. And even when it came to the zakat and the sadaqah in the wajib meaning, they would come and start collecting it. So Allah wanted to separate them. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَى. First discussion is about faqir. Fuqara is the plural of faqir. Faqir is the one who is destitute, and miskeen is a person. So, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. Miskeen is a person whom poverty has incapacitated and who lacks the ability to move. So he's stuck in that maskan. From that, the word miskeen comes into. Thus, he is more needy and in a worse situation than the faqir. The word sadaqah itself, or the word sidaq, are derived from the root word sidq. You all know what sidq means. Righteousness, right? Truthful nature. So the word sadaqah is a sign of sincerity and righteousness in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, the word sidaq, which is used for mahr, or the dower, the bridal gift, is also what? A sign of sincerity and truthfulness in one's affection for one's spouse. So therefore, don't delay your mahr. We'll settle it when the discussion of divorce will come. No. You have mahr, it's a qarz on you, pay it off. Give it away. In our Desi culture, it might be the case when it says, well, when you're giving your mahr, it means you're bidding farewell, or khudafis, that's it, done. No. It's a sign of your righteousness. So if you haven't settled your mahr with your spouse, do it right away. That is a qarz upon you, sort of. Unless, of course, she forfeits it and she forgives you. But having the concept that let's put the heftiest mahr possible, who has to pay? right? She's not going to ask. I don't have to pay. So let's go ahead and put any amount that we can. No, that's not how it works. It is sign of your righteousness that you settle this right away. That's why there are two terminologies. Mu'ajjal, where right away you give something, and that which is, mu'akhar, at the end, later on, whenever you are, for example, capable of paying the rest. So you have something which is $10,000. You say, well, I'll give 2,000, khums of it, right? I'll give 2,000 right now, and then I'll give the remaining 8,000, for example, in the talab, whenever she demands it. So this is something, the root word is sadaq, mahr. That's why when we recite the nikah, you've heard this when we say ankahtu muwakkilati ala al-mahr al-ma'loom was sadaq al-ma'loom, right? Both words are used. So the word sadaqa and the word sadaq, which is the bridal gift, should be taken care of. So what is meant by sadaqah in this verse? Of course, as I mentioned, is the obligatory zakat, the wajib. Those 9 things upon which zakat is wajib. The 4 types of edibles that you consume, the wheat, the barley, the dates and the raisins, the 3 types of cattle or the animals, and the 2 gold and silver, which used to be used for trading. Not anymore, not the gold and the silver that you have bought as a gift, or you've bought, for example, there might be khums on it, but there's no zakat on it because it's no longer used as what? A trading tool. So therefore, in reality speaking, there's really no zakat if you're not a farmer. There's no zakat if you don't have any animals or livestock. There's no zakat because gold and silver is not being used as coins for trading. But you still have to give what is called zakatul abdan, the body's zakat, which is Eidul Fitr, comes around and you give zakatul fitr. From the other pieces of evidence also, it is understood that by the term sadaqat in this verse under discussion, what is meant is specifically the obligatory charity, not charity in general sense that includes both wajib and mustahab. The 8 categories of the expenditure that are mentioned in this specific ayat, obligatory charities, do not include the recommended ones anywhere. Because recommended charity is not restricted to the poor and the masakin. Recommended charity could be given to a well-off person as well. It could be given to them and you still receive the reward for giving that charity, right? While this is makhsus to who? Innama sadaqat, innama, right? Hasr. It's doing mahsur to what? Fuqara, masakin, and all the rest of the group that are mentioned in here. So as I said, the word faqir comes from faqr, meaning a person whose poverty breaks his backbone. And miskin comes from maskan, meaning one who, due to poverty, has become confined to his home, maskan, place of living. And according to some narrations, a faqir is someone who is poor but does not ask people about it. Whereas miskin is one who, because of extreme destitution, asks and begs. But we sort of use these 2 words, intertwined. We say faqir ayata, a faqir came, a faqir did. So usually the word faqir is used. Nobody really says the word miskin to those who are begging. From the fact that in the previous ayat, the hypocrites criticized Rasulullah regarding the manner of distributing the wealth. Remember the previous ayat? It says, "Yalzimuka fis sadaqat." Right? They were blaming Rasulullah. In this verse, sadaqat are permitted only for specific groups. So you're out of this group. So don't come to say to Rasulullah that you're not just in distributing it. Allah has already set a boundary about it. Innama sadaqat, only for these group of people. You're not part of it. So don't expect anything from it, nor blame Rasulullah for not giving it to you. So, we understand that hypocrites had their eyes on zakat as well. Not only all the other spoils of war, but also on the zakat and the sadaqah that was being given. The third group that is mentioned in this ayat is al-amilina alayha. Those who collected, those who administer this zakat. So of course, there's a charitable organization that is responsible for collecting the zakat. In the time of Rasulullah, in the time of Imams, they were his representatives who would go around. Rasulullah won't go to the door, People, they would go, they didn't have the banking system, they didn't have the automatic deposit and all that. So Rasulullah was sent his amilin, workers, to door to collect what? Zakat. These people, now they're spending their time. Sometimes they have to go to another city. They have to travel for days. And then they have to stay away from their families. This became what? Their work. They became amil. They became workers for Rasulullah. Therefore, giving them the money, of course, you are giving them because they are amilin. They have come to collect on behalf of the authority. So you can give it to them. They are entitled to collect it. The government doesn't come knocking on your door, right? The IRS, the government sends, nowadays you just get the letter. But in the past, maybe you could think about it, that they would send their workers to go ahead and collect the tax, for example. So these people, this became their job, this became their work, and hence, not only that you gave it to them to give it to Rasulullah, but Rasulullah would also pay them for the work that they were doing. Amilin refers to the administrators of zakat, namely all those who exert effort in its collection, safeguarding it, distributing it, and accounting for zakat, and their compensation is paid from this zakat itself. So Rasulullah is collecting 1,000, and he sent 2 people to collect it. He's going to go ahead and take out from this 1,000 and pay these 2 people. This will be their salary. وَمَؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ, that those whose hearts are to be reconciled, and those who have no prior inclination toward Islam, they may be non-Muslims. Therefore, a lot of times a question is asked, can we give sadaqah to non-Muslims? Forget about the mustahab one. This ayat is saying you can give the wajib sadaqah to a non-Muslim as well. As long as they don't pose any inclination, hatred, or animosity toward your religion. Yet by allocating a portion of zakat, their hearts can be drawn closer. Now this does not mean paying zakat for the purpose of ta'lif-e-qulub does not mean we're purchasing faith with money. We're paying them off so they become Muslim, for example. No. It is a means of preparing the ground for understanding, education, and then knowledge and faith. So you can educate them. When a Muslim gives to non-Muslims, they say, what is the source? A Muslim family donated this. A Muslim brother gave this. A Muslim house of worship gave this. Right away, this will bring what? Ta'lif-e-qalb. They won't, if they heard something in the news and they had grudge, especially you can understand in this day and age that we live in, that the animosity that is out there, when this sort of act of goodness and charity comes from a Muslim, and we get this a lot, especially in the Franklin Township. You guys don't hear about this, but we have a clergy council where amongst the clergies, some Christians, some Jews, some Hindus, and even some other ones, sometimes they present that, oh, a case has come, so-and-so is in need. Their need is about $5,000. Can we get all the houses of worship to come together and help out this individual? So we have contributed towards that, and that is something which is being done. So this is not necessarily to go ahead and win their hearts and to purchase their faith by giving them money. No, it is primarily يُتَأَلَّفُهُمْ وَيُعَلَّمُهُمْ كَيْ مَا يَعْرَفُوا. You're teaching them, you're educating them so that they may know the truth. This is the reality behind it. Fourth group that is mentioned, or fifth group rather, you had the fuqara, you had the masakin, you had the amilin, and then you have mu'allafatul qulub, and now you have al-gharimin. Gharimin is the one which is designated, it is one of the designated uses of zakat. It refers to those who are in debt. And they have not fallen in debt because of negligence. Rather, they had fallen in debt because they are what? They are, victim of something. There was a flood, or there was a tornado, or there was some other natural disaster. Their business, for example, was swept away, or there was some extensive damage that was done to their business. That is the reason these people are gharimin. And so such as those people who have lost their livelihood, their possession, due to other fire, floods, or shipwreck, or whatever, natural disasters, these should be given from this zakat. Now there's a possibility this person is known to be a well-known affluent individual in the society, that's fine. Right now, this person is what? Is in trouble. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said one of the hadith, Ayyuma mu'minin aw muslimin mata wa taraka daynan wa lam yakun fi fasadin wa la fi israfin fa'ala li-imami an yaqdiyahu. Any believer or Muslim who dies and leaves behind a debt, provided it was not incurred through corruption or extravagance, that has to be the dalil in between. Then it is upon the imam to settle that debt. So this person will come in the absence of imam to naib imam, those who are amilin, collectors of khums and zakat. He'll go to them and he said, look, I am in need, and they will be fulfilling his need. Next group which is mentioned is fi sabilillah, refers to all the good deeds that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the zakat could be used for any good deed. Building a mosque, for example, building a mussasa, for example, building khairiyat, for example, charitable organizations, for example, educational institutions, for example, hospitals. All of these could be used from this wajib zakat. And of course, includes matters such as religious propagation, welfare services, relieving the difficulties of Muslims around the globe. There are many who are suffering, the orphans around. Although in most tafsir, it is mentioned, most prominent application has been identified as war and jihad. So back then, that was really the need. And this discussion is right after the Battle of Tabuk anyway. So one of the primary reasons, or one of the means to use this money was for jihad, to use it for the war and the battles that Muslims were facing. Ibn Sabil is a person who is wealthy in his homeland, but while traveling has become stranded and without funds. So back in the day, this was the case, but now it's become a business. You would go to Mecca or Medina, you go for ziyarat, and then someone will come up and says, I lost my passport, I lost my money, In 10 years that I was able to go to Hajj, many people we came across. Initially, we felt bad for them. They spoke our language, they came up and said, I have means over there, but I can't, I've lost this and that, I'm in need of money. And out of goodness, mu'mineen that went with us, they would go ahead and give it to them. But then, what will happen? Later on, we found out, no, not all of them are really in need. This is something which is being done, deliberately, and so when someone like this does this, those who are really in need, they are deprived of it then. Then you can't really trust anyone. So, but nonetheless, this person, Ibn Sabil, is someone who's wealthy in his own hometown. But now he's stranded away from the hometown and therefore is in need, doesn't have access to funds. So it's okay to give them and help them with this zakat. An overview of zakat. The ruling of zakat was revealed in Mecca. Although there was very little application in Mecca, there weren't many Muslims. They weren't really affluent. They didn't have much money. They were living, in very dire situations. You realize the 3 years in Shaykh Abi Talib, what do you think? They have hardly anything to eat. They're feeding themselves on leaves and whatnot. You think they're going to be paying zakat? But nonetheless, the ruling was revealed in Mecca. But due to small number of Muslims and limited amount of zakat wealth, people paid it personally to Rasulullah. Rasulullah, I have this much, and this is what is due upon me, for example. After the establishment of the Islamic government in Madinatul Munawwara, the matter of collecting zakat from people, depositing it into Baytul Mal, and centralizing it under the authority of the Islamic ruler was instituted. Last ayat of this same chapter, towards 130, 133, there's an ayat that says, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَاتٍ. O Prophet, take from their amwal sadaqat. So it is mentioned that, the surah, like other lengthy surahs, were revealed in Madinatul Munawwara. And therefore, the concept of خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, take from their wealth, the sadaqah, is a wajib, obligatory zakat that is being mentioned, not the mustahab one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not telling Rasulullah, go ask people for their mustahab sadaqah. As it is, mustahab sadaqah, people will take out for bala and for other reasons. He said, no, Rasulullah is not going to be going and asking for that. What Rasulullah is held responsible for asking is that which is the wajib one. So zakat is not exclusive to Islam. Rather, it is also something which existed in the previous religions. Hazrat Isa ﷺ is quoted as saying in Quran, while he was still in the cradle, he says, Awsani bis salate was zakat. You know, the whole, when he says, Inni Abdullah, Tani al-Kitab, wa ja'alani nabiyya, and Mubarakan, Ainama, all those things. And towards the end it says what? Awsani bis salate was zakat. I have been given wasiyat, meaning it's become obligatory upon me to do what? Salat and to give zakat. Hazrat Musa ﷺ addressed the children of Israel saying, Aqimus salat wa atu zakat. And regarding all prophets we read, وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ فِعْلَ الْخَيْرَاتِ وَإِقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ وَإِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ. Remember the discussion we had about Ita and Ata the other night? So here, when it came to zakat, it was always Ita. But when it came to a bigger giving to Rasulullah, it was Atayna kal Kawthar. So regarding all of the Anbiya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, everyone was given the command to give zakat. In Quran, 4 expressions are used to refer to zakat. 1, Ita'ul mal, or giving wealth. وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى. Number 2, the word sadaqah, as used in this ayat, or towards the end of Surah Tawbah, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً. Or the word infaq, a general spending, يُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُنْفِقُ. That when it says يُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُنْفِقُ, right over there is infaq. And of course the zakat, the word itself, يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ. In Quran, zakat is usually mentioned together with prayer, right? Aqimus salat wa atiz zakat. Yuqimuna salat wa yutuna zakat. And other areas where you find the word iqamus salat and ita'uz zakat are mentioned next to one another. And according to narrations, the acceptance of salat is conditional upon the payment of zakat. If you want your salat to be accepted, you need to make sure that you give zakat. And that zakat which is mentioned next to salat is not your wajib zakat. It encompasses all types of charities and donations. So he said that wajib is obligatory itself. It's not going to be standing next to another obligation. Sort of say like, jihad is wajib and amr bil maruf wa nahi anil munkar. Or one of them is dependent on the other. Quran is saying aqimus salat wa atu zakat, that you give zakat, only then your salat is accepted. So that wajib one itself is wajib. You should not run away from that. But whenever in Quran this istilah is combined with salat, it is not referring toward the wajib zakat. It's not referring toward that zakat which is obligatory upon you. So this linkage conveys the relationship with God and the relationship with people. Aqimus salat, establish your connection with Allah. Wa atuz zakat, establish your connection with the makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Quran, none of the other religious obligations have been paired with prayer in this manner. Only zakat has been paired in this manner. Receiving zakat is unlawful and haram for Sayyids. Right? There's a conversation about that as well. A group from Banu Hashim asked Rasulullah to appoint them as agents responsible for collecting zakat on livestock, so that they might receive a share as zakat administrators, right? So Rasulullah, give us the opportunity so that we become amilin alayha, right? And Rasulullah said, no, zakat is unlawful for me and for you. You cannot be amilin of zakat. You cannot be collectors and the administrators of that. Except in the case where both giver and the recipient are what? Sayyids. But then, our misconception in our communities is what? That any type of sadaqah that we give is for haram for Sayyids. No. It's only talking about the wajib one. When you take out that mustahab sadaqah on daily basis, you can give it to anyone, regardless of the fact that you're Sayyid or non-Sayyid. Even if you're non-Sayyid, you take out sadaqah on regular basis for your salamti, for the salamti of your family, for the salamti of Imam Zamana, you keep it aside You can give it to anyone you want to. You don't have to ask them if they're Sayyid or Ghair Sayyid. Only when you see on the day of Eid al-Fitr, right? We have separate boxes. Why? That's the wajib zakat. The wajib zakat has to be separated between the two Sadat and Ghair Sadat. The law of zakat does not signify that Islam desires the existence of a class of poor people. إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. It does not mean that we need to have poor and the miskeen who receive this zakat and a class of wealthy people who give this zakat. Islam is not saying, oh, there must always be the poor who are the recipient, there must always be a rich who are the givers. No, it is a solution to an external social reality. This is the reality that we live in. Not everybody is at the level, same level, when it comes to their social status, when it comes to their, earnings and their, jobs and all that stuff. There are always going to be disparity and places where they live. Even the wealthy sometimes, as we mentioned, encounter situations such as theft, fire, accident, captivity. Within the Islamic system, there must be a budget for social security, right? And to address such circumstances. Now, there's a lengthier discussion on this zakat. It will not be justice if I just skim through it quickly and do not pay attention to it. Inshallah, we'll address some of that while we move to ayat number 61 next week. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq and ability to understand our obligation toward this very important act, wajib act of sadaqah and zakat. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a tawfiq and understanding that wajib sadaqah, which also includes khums, that we are not heedless from it and we're not negligent about it, and we do our duty and due diligence to go ahead and take care of this wajib act just the same way we do for our salat and psalm. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of our weighted Imam and make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum ya Nabi Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Habib Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Khiyaratul, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, assalamu alaikum ya Abdullah, assalamu alaikum ibn Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum wa ala jaddika wa abik wa ala ummika wa akhik wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, assalamu alaikum ya Gharib al-Ghuraba, assalamu alaikum ya Mu'in al-Du'afa wal Fuqara, assalamu alaikum ya Shams al-Shumus wa Anis al-Nufus, أيها المدفون بعرض التوسلي ابن موسى الرضا ورحمة الله وبركاته, السلام عليكم صاحب العصر والزمان, السلام عليكم إمام الإنس والجان, السلام عليكم شريك القرآن, أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك وانصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته.